The flames danced in the furnace. They licked at the metal door, hungry for more. Officer Sam Green felt a chill run down his spine, and it wasn't from the heat. He was inside the Cedar Hills steel mill, responding to a disturbance. The air hung thick with the scent of iron and fear. He rounded a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. A man stood before the open furnace, his face shrouded in shadow. He held a struggling child in his arms, a young boy with terrified eyes.
"Put him down!"
Sam commanded, his voice firm despite the tremor in his chest. The man turned, his face illuminated by the firelight, his eyes cold and empty, locked onto Sam's. A name escaped Sam's lips, barely a whisper.
"Frank Stone?"
Frank didn't respond. He tightened his grip on the boy, who let out a muffled scream. Sam lunged, his hand reaching for his holster, but it was too late. With a final, horrifying grin, Frank Stone threw the boy into the fiery inferno. 1980. The Cedar Hills steel mill stood silent, a rusting giant against the bleak sky. It had been abandoned since the incident, shrouded in whispers and fear. Now a group of young filmmakers dared to venture inside, their cameras rolling, eager to capture the legend of Frank Stone. Mark, the director, adjusted the camera, his eyes gleaming with excitement.
"Okay, let's get this shot,"
he said, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. They moved through the decaying building, their footsteps loud in the eerie silence. As they reached the furnace room, a cold wind whipped through the mill, stirring dust and shadows. The hairs on the back of their necks stood on end.
"Did you feel that?"
whispered Jessica, the sound technician, her hand trembling on the boom mic. Suddenly, the camera flickered, and a distorted image appeared on the small screen. It was a man's face, twisted in a grotesque smile. Frank Stone. 2024. Madison, a paranormal investigator, sat in her cluttered study, her gaze fixed on the film reels spread across her desk. They were old, brittle with age, the labels barely visible. These were the reels from the Cedar Hills Steel Mill project, untouched since 1980. She had heard the stories, the legends of the cursed film. Those who watched it were said to be plagued by nightmares, driven to the brink of madness. Madison, however, refused to believe the hype. She was a woman of logic, of science. With a deep breath, she threaded the film through her projector, the whirring of the motor the only sound in the room. As the images flickered to life, a chill ran down her spine. The footage was distorted, filled with static and strange, fleeting shapes. Then she saw him. Frank Stone, his eyes burning into her soul from across time and space. The key turned in the lock with a heavy thunk. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light that pierced the gloom of Jarrett Manor. Madison stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. She had come to Jarrett Manor seeking answers, following a trail of cryptic clues found within the film reels. Legend had it that the manor once belonged to a reclusive clockmaker, obsessed with manipulating time itself. The floorboards creaked under her weight as she moved deeper into the house. She ran her hand along the dusty furniture, her fingers tracing the outlines of long-gone lives. In the center of the grand hall, she found it. A massive grandfather clock, its intricate carvings depicting scenes of celestial bodies and swirling vortexes. This was no ordinary timepiece. This was the horologium. Section 5. The horologium. The horologium stood before her, a monument to forbidden knowledge. Its pendulum lay still, frozen in time. Madison circled the clock, her fingers trailing along its smooth, cold surface. She had studied the writings of the mad clockmaker, deciphering his ramblings about bending time to his will. He believed that the horologium was not just a timepiece, but a gateway, a bridge between parallel realities. And within its intricate gears and springs lay the power to unlock these alternate timelines. Madison knew the risks. She understood the delicate balance of the universe, but she also knew that Frank Stone's reign of terror had to end, even if it meant tampering with the very fabric of time. With a deep breath, she reached for the clock's face, her fingers hovering over the Roman numerals. The air crackled with energy, and she felt a surge of power course through her veins. It was time. Section 6. The Ritual. Following the clockmaker's instructions, Madison began the ritual. She moved with precision, her movements mirroring the intricate dance of the celestial bodies depicted on the horologium's carvings. The air grew heavy, charged with anticipation. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls as she uttered the ancient words, her voice resonating through the silent manor. With each syllable, the horologium hummed, its energy building. The room seemed to vibrate, the boundaries of reality blurring at the edges. The scent of ozone filled the air, and a low hum vibrated in her teeth. She was close. Suddenly, the grandfather clock sprang to life. Its pendulum swung with impossible speed, its chimes deafening in their intensity. A blinding light erupted from the clock face, engulfing the room. Section 7. Frank Stone. The light subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence. Madison shielded her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. The air crackled with residual energy. And then, she saw him. Standing before the fireplace, wreathed in shadows and smoke, was Frank Stone. He looked just as he did in the film footage, his eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light. He smiled, a slow, predatory grin that sent chills down her spine. "You shouldn't have done that," he rasped, his voice a gravelly whisper. Madison stood her ground, her fear giving way to determination. "It ends now, Frank," she said, her voice unwavering. Frank laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the manor. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "I am beyond your control." Section 8. The Entity. As Frank Stone stepped forward, the air around him seemed to distort and warp. Shadows danced at the edge of Madison's vision, whispering promises of chaos and despair. She could feel a presence behind Frank, something ancient and evil, something far more powerful than the man himself. The temperature plummeted and a wave of nausea washed over her. The scent of sulfur filled the air, choking her, suffocating her. Frank's grin widened, revealing teeth that seemed to lengthen and sharpen before her eyes. "You have unleashed something far worse than me," he hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "The entity hungers." The shadows behind Frank coalesced, swirling and twisting, taking on a monstrous form. A chorus of whispers filled the air, chanting her name, beckoning her closer. Madison stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. Section 9. Aftermath. The air hung heavy with the stench of ozone and fear. The grandfather clock stood silent, its pendulum still. Dust motes danced in the pale moonlight that filtered through the grimy windows of Jarrett Manor. Madison lay on the cold floor, her body trembling with exhaustion. She could still feel the entity's icy breath on her skin, hear its whispers echoing in her mind. But it was gone, for now. She had managed to banish it back to its dark corner of the universe, but at a terrible cost. Frank Stone was gone, his physical form consumed by the entity during their struggle. But she knew, deep in her gut, that it was only a matter of time before it found a new vessel, a new puppet to manipulate. Section 10. Whispers. Picking herself up, Madison stumbled out of Geraint Manor and into the cold night air. The stars seemed to mock her with their indifference, their distant light offering no comfort. As she made her way back to her car, she could hear the whispers following her, slithering through the trees, carried on the wind. They spoke of a power awakened, of a hunger that could never be satiated. They spoke of a darkness that would soon consume the world. Madison shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. She knew then that her work was far from over. The entity was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its chance to return, and she, Madison, was the only one who stood between it and the destruction it craved. The fight for the world had just begun.